Well, thank you very much, Carolina Chocolate Drops, for coming by here to CBC Saturday Night Blues Studio. It's great to have you here in Edmonton for the Edmonton Folk Music Festival this weekend. Rhiannon Giddens, thank you very much. You're one of the founders of the group. Mm-hmm. And Hubert Jenkins, the latest new member, I guess, and thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having.
Rhiannon, recognizing that you do far more than Piedmont string band music, it's kind of where the Carolina Chocolate Drops established their reputation, mm-hmm. and your first album, and most of your second album was certainly largely in that area. Could you tell us a bit about really what Piedmont string band music is, and a bit about where it started?
Sure. String band music is often sort of represented as only existing in the Appalachians or in the mountains, the western part of the South. And what I found, and a lot of other people too, but like my personal journey, and as I found out that wasn't the case, and in that African Americans actually had a huge part in string band music. And so the more that I looked into it, the more I found, and then finding a fiddler named Joe Thompson. He's really the sort of linchpin to all of this, is that he was 86, when we first started to play with him, and he was the last member of his family. He was from Mebane, North Carolina, and that's where a large part of my family's from, and I had never heard of him. And I was like, how did this happen, And he used to play with his family, but now he was the last one left, and he played the old style. It was really an older generational music that really didn't exist in a lot of other communities. It had been pretty much obliterated by World War II and the advent of the television, and he was able to keep it going because some folklorists came and found him and said, "Oh wow, can we keep playing?" So he kept playing with his cousin, and then later with other folks, and then we came along and he played with us, and it was really an amazing opportunity to educate people at large that the Piedmont style of music was a very vibrant thing, and the fiddle and banjo tradition was very, very rooted in that. And the Piedmont is in the middle of the state, so not the West, and not as people had thought, and so it had a different feel to it. I feel like it was had more African American influence, even though there were Black folk living in the Appalachians. The Piedmont style, I kind of feel, that has more of a bluesy kind of feel. I mean, I'm no ethnomusicologist, but the music that we find from that center part of the state definitely is got a different character, I feel, than to the stuff further west. So it was the opportunity of getting his music and his family's music, and then the whole region's music, because it's not necessarily just a black and white thing; it was a regional thing. So the music from that region sounded like that, compared to like the West, and compared to the coastal regions.
I know when people talk about Piedmont blues, there's a bit of a ragtime tradition to mm-hmm. it. There's a bit of a feel-good, mm-hmm. Definitely a dance component mm-hmm. to it. Does that translate as well over to the string band tradition of Piedmont music?
Absolutely. I mean, because Joe and his family, their function was dance musicians. They played for the square dances, and they played for the dances in the white community and the black community. So they were a real sort of force for bringing people together, and it was really interesting, and that they would play the same music. Now, if you asked him about it, the dances were different, like the way people danced and stuff was different, but he could clearly play for both, so it wasn't that different. And so his music, definitely all of it is functional music. It was, I mean, he definitely had the religious stuff, but in terms of the fiddle banjo dance tunes, like they would have been for a dance, like, clear out the living room, put all the furniture on the lawn, and let's everybody get in there and dance, and so that's how we started with it.
I was going to ask you how you would characterize a dance in that environment, but it would be pretty much in a house and a weekend party kind of environment.
Yeah, like after a big community event where everybody gets together and is working on something, a corn shucking or something like that, and then at the end of it, they put all the furniture on the lawn, and then Justin Robinson, who also founded the Chocolate Drops with me, he was talking about hearing stories about people would get up in the kitchen and they'd start frying chicken, and then they'd sell it to the dancers. I mean, this was not like, completely, I mean, it was like, there's little bits of everything in there. It's just, I wish I could have been there for one of those. Well,
Dom Flemons was the person that started the band with you as well, and just wondering at what point he came along, and was his interest very, very similar at that time? How did you meet?
Well, we met at something called the Black Banjo Gathering. That's where I had met Joe before, but we all met Joe and thought, oh, wow, this is an amazing thing. And he was living in Phoenix at the time. He had just finished school, and so had Justin. And so he came over to North Carolina that summer, and then me and him and Justin started playing together. He and I and another fellow named Sule out in Arizona had played in a band called Sankofa Strings that preceded Carolina Chocolate Drops. And that had more of the, Dom comes from a songster sort of jazz blues. Like he knows about or knew about the string band stuff back then, but he was really more steeped in those traditions. So we started playing that kind of stuff first, and then when we started going down to Joe's house on Thursday nights, that's when all three of us, me, him, and Justin, kind of had come to the old time music roughly around the same time, and so we were kind of blank slates. We each had gotten a little bit, a year or two of kind of this and that, and it sort of all came together with Joe. So we all sort of, I think that's one of the reasons why the sound evolved as it did, because none of us had a real heavy, 10-year preconceived notion of what string band music should be, so we just kind of let it flow.
Hubert, well, congratulations to both of you. I just found out about the Living Blues Awards this week, just in the last couple of days. And, of course, the Carolina Chocolate Drops just won Best Traditional. I guess it's for Leaving Eden. New Recording, Traditional and Acoustic is the official winner of that category.
Yeah,
so.
And Dom won Best Musician Other, I think, for banjo.
Most Outstanding Musician
that's
Other for banjo. Yeah. Great. Hubert, this is your recording debut, and here you are, all of a sudden winning a Living Blues Award. Congratulations.
Yeah, I didn't even know that until just now.
You don't read our Facebook? What's up?
I don't read anyone's Facebook. I was also nominated for Fiddler of the Year, and I don't think I got it.
Oh, really?
Well, you have an entirely different background. You're from Brooklyn, New York. And tell us about your musical background and interest in this kind of great music.
Oh, sure. Well, I grew up playing different instruments. I played saxophone as a kid and cello and a little bit of drums. And by the time I was out of high school, I was playing bass and playing bass guitar in different bands. And when I was about 18, one of the bands I was playing in got really interested in country blues. Like someone got a Skip James record, and we're like, what the heck is this? And changed our lives forever. And that's when I decided to kind of devote myself to playing acoustic music. And I played a lot of blues stuff, Charlie Patton and Blind Willie Johnson and McTell and all that sort of stuff. And started hitchhiking around and hoboing around and working for a couple of months, saving money, then traveling and blowing all of it, coming back and learning music that way and playing from listening to albums. And so that was sort of my introduction into the music. And I think right before I kind of got involved with the Chocolate Drops, I was sort of having this, my own sort of journey into black people did other things besides blues music. Here's traditional jazz all of a sudden, and here's D. Ford Bailey at the Grand Ole Opry, and here's string band music, and this is what Minstrelsy really is, and all that sort of stuff was happening. And at the same time, I was getting deeper into the community and still being around people who had no idea. I'd play a Robert Johnson song for someone and be like, wow, I've never seen a black person play bluegrass before, and so that was already becoming a part of me. It was trying to teach people about things and do all that sort of stuff. And then I got the phone call when Justin left the group to see if I wanted to join, because I'd made friends with Dom Flemons at some point on the road, and I also met Sam Duffy, who's the brother of Tim Duffy, who runs the Music Maker Relief Foundation. Mm-hmm. And now I'm in it and living the dream, and feel very fortunate. Yeah. I
know that you were a busker in New York, and it was interesting when we were walking over here to find out that when you were in Edmonton last year, you performed at a festival, and then you went down to Market and busked as well.
I did, yeah. We had we had so much time. I don't even know why. We had just a whole day to not do anything, and so I was just sitting in my room and playing my banjo anyway. So I figured, why don't I go down there and do it? And I really enjoy it. Even when I'm back home in New York, sometimes I'll I'll do it. It's just a different way of performing and a different way of looking at people and seeing how people react to songs and trying new stuff and just being able to yell and be a weirdo and dance and basically getting paid to practice, you know. But one of my favorite times is last year I was busking in New York, and this guy comes up to me and he's like, "Hey man, do you know any Carolina Chocolate Drop songs?" I was like, "I know one or two, you know." And he's like, "Oh man, do you know this one?" I was like, "Oh yeah."
You didn't tell me that. That's hilarious.
So you said you were interested in the kind of responses you get in different places. In Canada, what works when you're busking compared to other places?
My big thing was like, you know, someone would walk by, it's like, "Hey, do you want to hear traditional American music? From the South, way South." People are like, "What is this? What's wrong with this guy?" And then you just start playing the song, you know. But it's just all about getting people's attention, you know, like you see maybe like a couple walking by, like, "Hey, I've got a love song for you, straight from America, no delay," and you start playing it, you know. And they're already hooked; they can't just walk away. You know? I've got to listen.
There's a whole different set of chops that you have to have as a busker than as a stage performer. I mean, as a stage performer, they've bought the ticket to see you, so you know you can relax, you know. And I think festivals are somewhere in between stage performing and busking, because a lot of times people are just walking by and they don't know who you are, so you kind of want to pull them in, you know. So I mean, having that ability, I think, of pulling people in on the street is just like, it's so underrated and it's so important. It's incredible.
Well, it's good to hear about your history of interest in country blues and in New York, and that's one of the things I love about what you do, Rhiannon, is you know, your interpretation of blues, and you do some Memphis Minnie, Kansas City, Joe McCoy material, I believe, and Trouble in Mind and songs like that. Is this something that's always been parallel in your interest in music?
Well, I really discovered a lot of that stuff all at the same time. You know, I just found the older styles of music altogether. You know, those old recordings. You know, so you know, growing up, I didn't really hear a lot of that stuff. So it was after graduation from college and after I got into string band music, then I started going, you know, researching all of the offshoots of that and finding that fantastic sort of 20s female vocal style that's just so not around today, and just going, for being a classically trained singer, but not being classically trained my whole life. You know, I came to it later, so I was able to like learn those tools. But then like after that, I was like, I've got this full voice, and the style now is all like Alison Krauss. You know, let's sing as, you know, small as you can right up on the microphone. And I was like, what music, you know, what do I do with this voice, you know? And then I find this music and I'm like, oh, this is where it goes. Because this is before, you know, the fancy microphones, and you had to project and you had to, you know, have a fuller sound. And I was really, really attracted to that. And then just, you know, the sort of strong sort of woman, you know, I'm just really, that's one of my things. I mean, finding No Man's Mama by Ethel Waters, like, well, she didn't write it, but, you know, she performed it, like, was just, those kind of things just make my year. So.
Well, you went to Oberlin Conservatory. You trained as a singer there. Do they have any traditional courses in traditional history and traditional music there, or was it strictly more classical?
There, you know, Oberlin's actually got a pretty good folk history and sort of a line there, but I actually, ironically, was just completely in the conservatory. Like, I was opera all the way. I did lots of roles. I'd worked with the Cleveland Opera. I mean, I wanted to do opera, you know, and so I didn't avail myself of any of that when I was there, any of that history or the folk club or anything like that. So 10 years later, when we played the Folk Fest, it was kind of like it was a fun homecoming.
We were talking earlier about the Music Maker Relief Foundation. Hubert, you mentioned that's how you kind of met Dom. Could you tell us a bit about the Music Maker Relief Foundation and the role that it plays and how it works within your group?
So the Music Maker Relief Foundation is based out in North Carolina, and they are all about helping older Southern musicians who might be living in poverty or can't get certain services in their lives, and it helps them get those services and also helps them get gigs and perform and get their music out there.
Yeah, they've also helped track royalties down, and
That's right.
you know, if they recorded and sort of got shafted, they try to also track that down as well.
Right, and so that, you know, was just a beautiful thing to start off with. But and I guess the way they helped the band is that they were sort of there. Tim was there from the beginning and helped you guys get on your feet. And
yeah, I mean, he was our first label, and still is one of our managers. But you know, came up to us at a festival and said, "Do you guys have a CD?" And we're like, "Well, yeah, but we're making them in the car at the moment, like on the way to gigs." You know, he was like, "I can help you out with that." So he, I think his experience with us led him to start the Next Generation program. I think in
right, because I met him a couple of years after you guys had started. I don't think I even really knew who you guys were even, but I'd met his brother Sam playing in New York. At a show that some friends of mine were running in the back of a Thai restaurant, and Sam used to come in and play fiddle with his then wife. But and he invited me to come down to Shikori Hills, and that's where I met Tim and started doing stuff with Tim Duffy. And then when Justin quit, I got a call from him and Dom, but Tim was like, "Can you play fiddle?" I was like, "No," and he's like, "You can join the band anyway."
Luckily, I can, so that worked out.
Well, I think it's wonderful the way you also, in addition to, of course, string band music of all kinds, incorporate, panpipe instruments, from North Mississippi Hill Country and that beautiful sound and more jazz and blues, I think, in the development of the bands. Musically, do you see yourself going in a particular direction, looking for certain kinds of material? How is that evolving?
Well, what's happened is that we've really turned into a real black string band in that we do whatever works, and when we started out, it was me, Dom, and Justin, and it was we did a lot of Joe Thompson tunes, and that was what the trio did, and then Justin went back to school for forestry. That's why he quit the band. So he wants to be out with the trees. It's really hard to do that on the road. And then when Hubby came in, he brought his sort of whole bag of tricks, that we didn't have before. And so we were able to explore more of the swing in jazz and that kind of stuff. And Dom bringing all of his instruments. I mean, so it's really been, we had a beatboxer for a while. And so we were exploring some of the mouth music, kind of traditions and how they work together. And so it's kind of, the personnel has changed, but the feel has always stayed the same, which is, we find what works together and how we can honor and bring back some of these old tunes without betraying them, but without trying to be a carbon copy of them. And so being able to just mix up the instruments and just go, hey, Joe never played with Jug, but it sounds great, so let's do it. It's that kind of thing. It's finding what the similarities are without trying to push it together. We just kind of organically let it happen. And so that's kind of what we've done in the last 8 years, and we'll just keep doing that, I think. We're not gonna do one of those things where we're gonna release an album all of original material.
We could if we wanted.
We could if we wanted to.
We could totally do that.
Definitely, we could. Yeah. But I don't think we ever will, because a lot of people do that, and that's great. But we want to keep doing what we're doing because not a lot of other people are doing that, and we feel like it's really important. And there's just a lot of freaking amazing songs that are just saying, hello, wait, please come pick me up and make me live again. So
it's amazing how versatile the Jug is too, right?
Yeah.
In different kinds of music. It works all over the place.
It does.
Sure. Dom has a really interesting history that he brings to the band and his love of music. And one of the things I understand he did was he worked on some of the Newport Folk Festival archives. And I'd love to hear more about that from himself. But his background probably has a lot to do with the material that you select and what he brings to the group.
Well, I mean, he brings his own stuff. I bring a whole bunch of stuff. Hubby brings a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, it's not like he's bringing his brain archives and we're just picking songs from. I mean, we each, the stuff that we bring is coming from ourselves, and that's kind of, I think, what makes the band unique is that it's not one person's vision. It's, everybody's vision, and how we're able to incorporate that. So he's able to bring, the Your Baby Ain't Sweet Like Mine's and those kind of amazing tunes that he refashions and makes them, contemporary without, sounding like, he makes it work for these audiences. And, I'm bringing the Scottish mouth music and the hit 'em up styles, and Hubby's bringing the, the obscure string band tunes that are awesome.
Really good. Really good. Sorry.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's, we all have that same, sort of historical drive,
Yep.
and Dom definitely has a mind for dates, details, people, and all that stuff, which is really, really great, but it's definitely not the only well that we're pulling from.
But I think it also just adds to, why we start to combine different traditions together, because we're a Venn diagram. We cross over in a lot of things, but there's still things that are unique to us. So, Rhiannon might start playing a song, and for me, it's like, wow, this reminds me of that song that's not in this genre at all, but it'll fit, because I have that different interest. Helps mash up those traditions, because we all have the different backgrounds and interests.
And I would imagine the longer you play together, the more room there is for improvisation, just because you know each other better. And
oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
for sure. Especially when I think we tend to kind of like create that space for stage. Once we get to stage, it's like we definitely kind of put a little bit of structure on certain songs. When we start to play a song, it's definitely like the only way we can get this is if we play it. We have to play it, and we have to improvise, and we have to let it like grow and be its own thing. Yeah,
definitely.
Well, you won a Grammy a couple of years ago, and of course the recent Living Blues Awards. What's the next record? Where are you at with that, and how is that going?
We're in the middle of figuring out all of that stuff. We're very much a put it on the stage and then, hey, we should record this kind of band. And, there's a lot of bands that kind of keep it all secret, and they create it in the studio, and then they release the record, and then they perform the record. Whereas when the record comes out for us, we're usually ready to keep moving on. So, we've definitely been putting new things in the stage show, and hoping that some of that's going to work as material. It's all in its kind of nebulous stages right now. But of course, more recordings is always the goal. So,
right. Well, thank you very much for being here today on Saturday Night Blues, and also best of luck with the new recording, and welcome back to Canada. It's great to see you back here.
Thanks. Always great to come back.
Yeah, man.